just keeps walking. So he cheated. He cheated Yadunandan Acharya. There's no question about the qualification of Yadunandan Acharya. He was qualified Vaishnava Acharya. He wasn't like some smarter or some Kula guru. He was qualified Vaishnava Acharya. And he cheated him, to go to Jagannath Puri. Other examples?
He cheated the.
Yeah, that's another one. Raghunath Das Goswami also was diplomatic when the Muslim Chaudhary was threatening to beat him. Bring your uncle, bring your brother. And I'm going tomorrow. Maybe I should have told you that. I'm going to Ramkelly, Melda tomorrow. We're teaching there, teachers training, Ramkelly, Melda. So in that where Sanatana Goswami was in the prison. And he said, "Oh, you're learned in all the Shastras." He said to the jail keeper, "You're such a saintly person. You're learned in all the Shastras." And the jail keeper is saying, he's crying, the tears are dripping down his beard. And he's saying, "From this day on, you're just like my son." And he said, "Release me, I'm going to Mecca." He said, "Release me, I'm going to go to Mecca. Hajj. Yeah, I'm going to go on Hajj." So all cheating and not true. He wasn't going to Hajj. He's not a learned scholar. He's not a saintly person. But great souls cheat for a greater cause. Of course, we have to be careful about that. Not that every cause becomes a great cause and we cheat. Generally, if we ask people for donations for a particular purpose, it should be used for that. I mean, not just generally. I mean, all the time. If we collect for specific Food for Life or whatever it is or something, it should be used for that. Not that we just collect in the name of something and then use it for other purposes in Krishna service. It's not proper behavior. Yeah.
Sorry, I had a second question regarding Sanjaya. He was envisioning the whole battlefield of Kurukshetra by dint of his spiritual vision, but he was not able to see Dhritarashtra living. What is that?
Well, maybe that benediction which was bestowed upon Sanjaya by Vyas Muni, maybe that was just for the period of time of the battle. He said you'll be able to see everything that happens on the battlefield, even in concealed places. And so maybe that was just for the purpose of presenting Bhagavad Gita. So yeah, the examples of the great souls cheating is there. Prabhupada gives examples. And we're also, he's saying, transcendental fraud. That's a good one to remember. Transcendental. We also, please read.
You also have the same opportunity to cheat the family members and move out to engage in the service of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Wow.
Such cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such transcendental fraud.
Yeah, such cheating was necessary for a great cause. That's an important one important statement of Srila Prabhupada that we'll remember. Especially if you find yourself in ISKCON administration. We'll keep that instruction in mind. Transcendental fraud. You made the slide transcendental fraud, it's like a nice one, that one. Could do a whole seminar on call it transcendental fraud. Maybe for ILS. ILS, transcendental fraud.
Devotees are expert.
Transcendental fraud. Yeah. So Narad now comes. Narad comes and he explains what happened to Yudhishthira, and he preaches also. He's saying that it's all the arrangement of the Lord. Don't lament for these things which are under the control of the Lord. And just like we're brought together for some time, we associate with each other. It's not permanent. These relationships are not permanent. So basic Atma Tattva Gyan, Narad is giving. Ahashtani Shahashtanam Aparani Chatushpadam Palguni Tatra Mahatam, Jivo Jiva Shajivanam. Those with four arms or 4 legs, Sahashtanam, are those, yeah, and Falguni Tatra Mahatam, the weak of the subsistence of the strong, Jivo Jiva Shajivanam. One living entity is food for another. And then he explains that he'll be by perfecting the practice of Ashtanga Yoga. Just see how qualified these people are. We don't hear every day that Dhritarashtra was practicing Ashtanga Yoga every day when he was in the palace. It wasn't, but just in the fag end of life, he can take up practice of Ashtanga Yoga and attain the siddhi that he can bring his body so hot that he can self-immolate. That's a perfection in where do you hear about that these days? The yogis can burn their bodies. No? And it just with a short period of practice, he was able to achieve such a level of perfection in Ashtanga Yoga. Just imagine the character of Dhritarashtra. Even though he's disqualified because of his attachment, but just try to understand the aristocratic and high class of personalities that were in the palace and that were leading the world and that Krishna was associating with. The Pandavas in this first canto, such exalted people, such qualifications. Just in a short practice of Ashtanga Yoga, he could attain the perfection of self-immolation. Amazing. Like when Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu appeared here in Navadip Dham, the non-devotees, they would criticize the Vaishnavas. They would write poetry. Even the non-devotee atheistic class was so highly qualified in Navadip. Such scholars. Navadipe, Chartodik, Hoite Lok Navadipe Jai, Navadipe Poreleshi Bidda Roshpai. Because in Navadip, if you study, you get a taste for learning. So even the materialists were learned scholars. So what to speak of Dvijamani, the crest jewel of the Navadip Brahmins. And they were all in fear when Keshav Kashmiri was coming, and Nimai is just a boy at that time, Navadip Chandra. And he was able to do such scholarship. Adi Khande Sri Gauranga Sharava Shastra Jai. The Adikanda Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat describes how Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he was conversant in all the scriptures. Sri Bhubane Heno Nahi Sheshon Mukohoi. No one within the 3 worlds could stand before him and discuss Shastra and defeat him in discussions on Shastra. And they were such learned scholars in Navadip Dham. Such learned scholars in the school and the toll of Gangadas Pandit. Joto Bakko, Gangadas Pandit Goren Shukrit Shunile Matro Thakur Doren. Whatever Gangadas Pandit spoke, hearing it just once, Nimai would remember. So Narad's mentioning that he'll perform the yoga process and the body will ignite. And then Gandhari will enter the fire, the funeral pyre of a husband's body. And then Vidura left that place. And he also hinted, what did he also hint? What did Narad Muni hint?
The passing away of Krishna.
Yes, yeah. So the next chapter is entitled, which you're looking at next week, the departure of Lord Krishna. But actually the departure of Lord Krishna is not even described in the chapter. Apart from this implication. And then the Pandavas retire, but it's not even mentioned, but it's implied. And that's discussed later in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the departure of Lord Krishna. So we'll see in the beginning of the next chapter that when, as we heard, Krishna came, he remained for the Rajasuya Yagya, and then he went back to Dwarka with Arjuna, and then 7 months had passed, and then Yudhishthira sees all these signs, and he's remembering this statement of Narad, that Krishna has completed his objective of delivering the burden of the earth, the demigods. So you can wait here as long as the Lord remains. So then he's thinking, Yudhishthira begins to suspect that maybe the Lord has departed, and that's so the chapter, the departure of Lord Krishna, it's just alluded to in a very poetic way. alluded to and hearing the effect that it had on Arjuna. Because Arjuna has got the news, and he's come back, and the effect that it had on him, and you'll hear in the next chapter. He became impotent and was defeated by some infidel cowherd men. So, although it's not directly described, the departure of Krishna, the effect, the surrounding incidents are described. That's so poetic. It's so poetic. Bhagavatam. So Dhritarashtra's death. Narad explains that Dhritarashtra will give up his body performing mystic yoga. Please read, someone can read.
Narad Muni indicated that his body by itself would burn to ashes. The perfection of the yoga system is attained by such mystic power. The yogi is able to quit his body by his own choice of time and can attain any planet he desires by turning the present body into ashes by self-made fire.
Please
While
read.
outside observing her husband, who will burn in the fire of mystic power along with his thatched cottage, his chaste wife will enter the fire with rapt attention.
Yeah.
This entering of a chaste lady into the fire of her dead husband is called the sati rite, and the action is considered to be most perfect for a woman.
What's our view, our movement is gone, the policy on the sati rite? What's our view on that?
No.
No. Yeah. Prabhupada mentions here that it's the most perfect action. But we don't publicly propagate this. In fact, you can be imprisoned for 7 years in India if you publicly glorify it. Mentions glorifying sati. Well, I'll read the thing for you. Yeah, punishment for glorification of sati. Whoever does any act for the glorification of sati shall be punishable with imprisonment not less than 1 year and may extend for 7 years, and a fine of 30,000 rupees. That's 1987 Commission of Sati Prevention Act. So this is in the Puranic age. Of course, Prabhupada is saying that the attachment to the husband is so great that the flames of the fire are insignificant compared to separation from the husband. Pati, Prabhu, Master. But this is we don't. Our ladies in our movement are not entering the fire of their departing husbands. They're remaining on and they're contributing to the Krishna consciousness movement, giving instruction to the other young ladies and the children as a widow.
No, does this look like sometimes attachment? Because what we are leaving our body at that time, we will attain that body. So they make it like a main body.
This is Varnashram Dharma, street Dharma. In the circumstances, this is the slow process. The sati rite is part of the slow, gradual process. You be a Brahmana, you be a Vaishya, and then if you do perfect Vaishya karma, next life you can become a Kshatriya. And then you become a perfect Kshatriya, next life you can become a Brahmin. When the astrologer knocked on the door of Nimai's house, and Nimai greeted him with such appreciation, and Panditji, tell me what I was in my previous life. He goes into his meditation, and he says, Das Avatar, he says the opulence, the Supreme Personality of God, he says that oh Vishwarup, in your previous life it appears that you were none other than the Personality of Godhead. And Gauranga, he says, wrong, you made mistakes in your calculations, Panditji. I know for a fact in my previous life I was a cowherd boy. And because of faithfully serving cows, in this life I've taken birth as a Brahmin. So this is a gradual process. so that the Kshatriya husband, she follows him, and the next birth they're elevated or whatever. They go Svarga or whatever. On the strength of her husband's elevated achievements, she achieves. The Satyra, she will achieve. But nowadays, we the husbands are, they're not, and neither are the wives that devoted. But in other words, that means that she doesn't need to do anything else except be faithful to her husband. That's the only qualification she requires to achieve the result of what he achieved. Now in ISKCON, a sannyasi, if he leaves a widow from grihastha life, becomes a sannyasi, that widow, she attains the same destination as the sannyasi husband, just as long as she doesn't get married again.
Even going back to Godhead.
Yeah, of course, going back to Godhead, even going back to Godhead, of course, she attains the same destination. Even she doesn't need to do anything else except not accept another husband. But generally, Prabhupada and Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, they're initiating ladies and expecting the ladies to also do sadhana practice in addition to being devout followers of their husbands. They should also practice Krishna consciousness, and that's generally our understanding, that the female disciples don't just rely on the practice of their husband, but they practice Krishna consciousness also. And that'll be described, that's described actually in the next chapter, the departure of the Pandavas, where Prabhupada mentions that Draupadi, the husbands were going and she was going with them, but they left Draupadi because they knew that she knew what to do. Prabhupada says everyone has to fly their own plane. In other words, you have to be Krishna conscious at the time of death. And it's up to you to do that. And the Guru helps you, but you have to be Krishna conscious. And then he explains, why does Narad mention the sati rite anyway? Why does he mention that the body will be ignited? Why does he mention that? Yes?
Don't try to bring back Gandhari.
Yeah. Well, don't go and reclaim the body to come and give it a royal burial. So that's why he's saying it. Please read.
Lord, the Muни's prophecy prohibited Yudhishthira Maharaj from going to the place where his uncle was staying, because even after quitting the body by his own mystic power, Dhritarashtra was not to be in need of any funeral ceremony. This prophecy of Narada Muni to Maharaja Yudhishthira forbade him to go to his widowed aunt.
Any question on chapter 13?
So I was having a general question that we see Sanjaya being so faithful to Dhritarashtra, Gandhari so faithful to her husband. Why not take to the process of devotion instead of having this faithful when you know the strengthen element to your faith?
Why not who take? Who? Why not who?
Like we see Dhritarashtra was not actually a very highly qualified devotee of the Supreme Lord.
Yeah.
Whereas Sanjaya was blessed by Vyasdev, and we see in the previous chapter Prabhupada mentioning even Gandhari was as qualified as Bhishma, one of the prophets. So why not take to the process of
Who? Dhritarashtra or Gandhari and Sanjay?
Gandhari and Sanjaya?
Oh.
Like I'm just telling, like in a even modern scenario, if someone is not so...
Well, you could say it's waiting for the preaching movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's why in the preaching movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Dinna hinna jokta chilo harinama udharilo. As everyone takes to Krishna consciousness, but at this time, a different time. Rishis and Munis would take to spiritual life and Krishna consciousness. There's not Krishna. He speaks out Arjuna. He speaks to humanity through Arjuna, but he's not organizing a massive program for distributing Krishna consciousness indiscriminately here and there, like Mahaprabhu did, like our acharyas have done. So different environment there.
Even Sanjay.
They were not all turning into Krishna conscious devotees you don't hear like that in the Mahabharata. That comes when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, even those who are not looking for spiritual life. I was a young adult, late teens, early 20s. I joined this movement when I was 21 years old. That's 37 years ago. At that time, I wasn't planning on spiritual life. I had so many other plans, material life, enjoying material life. But we were awakened. I never thought I'd be in India, in Mayapur, teaching Srimad Bhagavatam, discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. We weren't interested, we weren't looking, we weren't desiring such things. But as Prabhupada says, we are reclaimed. We are reclaimed. And we've been reclaimed. It's all by we're not looking for spiritual life. We're just quite happy with material life, but we've been reclaimed. We've been pulled out of material existence by Prabhupada and his followers. I was fortunate to be in a city where Prabhupada personally preached and established a temple and lived. Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. I contribute that to being why I became a devotee. Because Prabhupada sat on the Vyasa and said, the people of Melbourne have become fortunate because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared here. So I'm one of those fortunate people. Prabhupada, he came to that city, in that temple. Prabhupada Rath Yatra in Melbourne. I didn't see the Rath Yatra, but just the effect. I was 12 years old when Prabhupada was in Melbourne, Rath Yatra. I didn't see it. But the effect of that event purified me. And I met followers of Prabhupada, and they were such extraordinary people. They were affected by Prabhupada, and meeting the Prabhupada, those who met Prabhupada, meeting them affected me. It was a special time in those the 80s in Krishna consciousness movement. It was a very inspirational time. In the 80s. You were around in the 80s?
No.
Even in
No, 90s.
yeah. But in the 80s, it was like so much preaching, huge. Wasn't so many congregational development hadn't begun, and even you could say Indian preaching hardly. It was all festival was all foreign devotees, all Western Americans, Australians, British, French. It was in the 80s. Yeah, committed. People highly committed. It was less devotees, but they were very committed. Joining the movement in those days means you give everything. You give your life. So we were reclaimed. How did we get on to that? What was your question? It was a question.
Yeah, like Sanjaya. Yeah, Krishna was not so merciful, but Mahaprabhu.
Yeah, we want to. Yeah, I mean, there's no systematic. I mean, the preaching was so strategic that they had a restaurant. It was near the university, so I was a student in the university. And then they started infiltrating the university. Prasadam distribution. I got involved. I was taking prasadam in the like Food for Life, as a student, taking prasadam every day. And then they said, we need someone in that college to help set up a vegetarian club. I felt guilty because I was going here every day taking prasadam. I thought, like, how can I refuse these guys, All they need to do is set up a club, just like set up a student club. I can do that. I thought, okay, I'll do it. And that was it. I was finished after that. Everything collapsed in my material life after that. We did something because they gave us some Gauranga Sheva. We did something which when we were noticed by Gauranga Mahaprabhu, this boy, he set up the club. He became the president. Someone to be the president of the vegetarian club, which was prasadam distribution. So that was it. Everything just caved in after that. Material life, nothing left. So we were reclaimed. We got the efforts, Prabhupada going there, and the efforts of all Prabhupada's followers who set up a temple there. Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir is a fabulous temple. It's a fabulous temple. Like, produced so many wonderful Vaishnavas. Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. And Prabhupada went there, installed the deities. It's like a special place. How many places are there where Prabhupada is, and Prabhupada's rooms are there? You know, Prabhupada's rooms. This is the Vyasa that Prabhupada sat on, like here in Mayapur. We forget, but Prabhupada sat on that Vyasa. He was worshipped on that Vyasa. I was in Hyderabad recently. Another 2 temples Prabhupada built in India, Vrindavan and Hyderabad. Mumbai wasn't actually completed by the time Prabhupada left, but Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasana in Hyderabad. I was giving the class, it was like overwhelming to speak in a temple where Prabhupada installed the deities. Okay. Some of the topics we've been looking at over the last few days. Yudhishthira's reign, the conditions of the planet, Yudhishthira's leadership style, the shyness of the ladies in Hastinapura, their prayers, the way Krishna was received in Dwarka. Dhritarashtra departure, Gandhari entering the funeral parlor. Take a few moments to discuss with the partner what's been some valuable learning for you from studying these chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. Discuss with the partner what's been some valuable learning for you. Shubhakta Pandit Gaon, Shubhakta Bhagavat Pandit Gaon. Perhaps you'd like to share with the assembly what's been some valuable learning for you from your study of these 3 chapters, and share with the whole group. Deva.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
No. And just sharing what's some valuable learning.
What's the ask a question? Sorry.
Yes.
So we are discussing all these 4 chapters actually shows the ideal qualities of a king, and lot of Prabhupada wanted establishment of Varnashram Dharma in our society. We have qualified Brahmanas, few Vaishyas and lot of Shudras, but the Kshatriya element is lot missing. And through all the chapter, whether it is Krishna, Maharaj Yudhishthira and Parikshit, their qualities, we see how an ideal Kshatriya, how he should act, behave, etc. So that was a very important aspect through this section.
You found that very important aspect of this section. It comes up a lot in the later chapters, also chapter 16, 17, about the importance of the king for driving out the religion. So the theme is carried on in the later chapters in the first canto. What's been some valuable learning for you, Deva?
I think the theme of this unit, I feel like it helps us to understand the glory of Krishna and some of his opulence, which in a sense the essay allows us to analyze it personally for ourselves into sort of a preach application. But for this chapter, it kind of touches upon how Krishna was treated in